Journeys of Hope. Life is a journey, and this is your spiritual passport. Where will the journey take us today? Let's walk together as we learn to become people of faith and hope.
Welcome to Journeys of Hope. I'm Jason Nunez, one of your guides for today's journey, and I serve as Media Production Coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope. Pilgrim Center of Hope, producer of this weekly radio and podcast program, is a nonprofit ministry founded in 1993 with the mission of guiding people to walk in hope with Christ and the church. Our daily pilgrimage of life takes us along many difficult paths. Have you ever wondered how the church reaches out to those who cannot physically attend Mass? How are the spiritual needs of the homebound met, and how can they still feel a part of our faith community? Well, on today's journey, we will discover the hopeful and transformative work of the ministry to the homebound, learn about the role prayer plays while ministering to the homebound, and hear a story of hope about a visit to someone seeking the sacraments. Now, today we are blessed and honored to have a friend of Pilgrim Center of Hope join us. Mr. Ed Batis is with us here in St. Joseph Studio. Now, Ed is a dedicated missionary of hope who has witnessed firsthand the profound impact this ministry has on the lives of the homebound. Hello, Ed. Thank you for joining us on Journeys of Hope.
Well, hello, Jason. It's an honor and a privilege, and I'm humbled to be here to speak with you about such an uplifting and enriching ministry as Holy Communion to the homebound.
Fantastic. Let's get right into it here. So would you please share a bit about your background and how you became involved in the ministry to the homebound?
I am a cradle Catholic, born and raised in Joliet, Illinois, outside of Chicago. Married a Joliet girl who came down to St. Mary's University to go to school, and hence I followed her, and we set up our home here in 1986. We have 4 wonderful children, all married. They've given us 9 tremendously wonderful grandchildren, all baptized in the faith, and I am blessed.
Praise be to God.
Thank you very much. Kathy and I are members over at St. Matthew's here in San Antonio on Wurzbach. We've been there since 1986, and I became a Eucharistic minister right before we joined St. Matthew's at the church we were previous, and over that time to today, I have served as a Eucharistic minister in the church, and then most recently, within the last 2 years or so, to the homebound.
Beautiful. It's safe to say that you have some experience in this ministry, I'd say.
I thank you. It's his experience that comes through me. As we do anything in ministry, I find that I get sharper, better, more attentive, more aware, more tuned, more in touch as I exercise it more frequently. So I welcome every opportunity that comes to serve.
Now, you mentioned that you had become a minister right before joining St. Matthew's Catholic Church here in San Antonio. So can you speak a bit about that experience, about giving that yes and actually opening the door to enter that beautiful ministry?
I will tell you that as a lay, right, there is a hesitancy, on my part at least there was, to actually inject myself to that next level beyond the pew into the sanctuary and to be active there. I was an altar server for many years, an altar boy, if you will, and I do remember those times fondly of being that close to the altar in the sanctuary and how exhilarating it is to be right there when bread and wine are transformed into the body and blood of Christ. And so when I said yes to the request of our pastor, who was very influential in getting yeses from the parishioners when he needed them, I was not new to it, but it was very refreshing to start again and to be there close to the altar as a Eucharistic minister and then to serve the parishioners. So it kind of renewed something that I had done when I was serving.
I'm curious how you prepare spiritually and emotionally before a visit to someone who's homebound. But before we get to that, for any listeners who may be curious, what is the ministry to the homebound? Let's start there so we can help connect that dot and start on that same playing field here.
Sure.
So if you could just give us a brief kind of introductory into what exactly is the ministry to the homebound.
You know, I learned as I got involved in being an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion to the parishioners, I learned about the worship of the Eucharist outside Mass. The Church, through a Roman ritual and the proclamation back in 1973 or so, instituted the Holy Communion and worship of the Eucharist outside Mass, that ritual. And so I went out and bought the book, so to speak.
There you go.
And became familiar with when Holy Communion is allowed outside of Mass, the rite of distributing Holy Communion outside of Mass, and went to the source to learn what the Church's guidance and practice is in doing that in an appropriate way. I found out that there are a number of different options, if you will, within distributing communion outside of Mass to an individual person, to a number of people, maybe at a facility and such. So the book, the resource, is very straightforward, it's very clear, and it provides excellent guidance and discipline in the exercise of the ministry.
With that being said, kind of refreshing here a little bit, someone who is homebound, someone who's not able to go and physically go to church, go and participate in Mass, go and receive Holy Communion, receive the sacraments, participate, they're home. That's where they are. So you, as a member of the ministry to the homebound, you go and you travel to this person's home and you take communion to this person, correct?
Yes, yes. Amazingly, yes, I do. We get to carry Jesus in a pyx, right? The little gold circular containers that we see sometimes around, and we see people maybe having them and maybe not sure what they are, but that's what it is. It's just, in essence, a traveling tabernacle for the Eucharist. And when I get a call to serve and I receive someone's name, I'll make contact with them, and then I'll be prepared to set up the appointment with them at their convenience as best I can, and then take my picks that I got through a dear friend, Father Abel Ruiz. I will praise Father Abel for his guidance and his encouragement in this ministry with me, and a beautiful pyx that I have, in fact, here with me today.
Yes.
And that becomes the vessel that allows me to take Jesus from the tabernacle to the homebound.
Beautiful, beautiful. So then, with that in mind there, Ed, how do you prepare spiritually and emotionally before visiting someone's home? This must be something that, takes some getting used to, right? Maybe someone that you're not aware of, someone you don't know. So what steps do you take?
It can be daunting, right? You're getting ready to either knock on the door, ring the doorbell, or call a total stranger,
right.
Someone that you've never met before, you've never crossed paths. You may have some crisscross and common contacts, if you will, within the parish community, but many times that's not the case. Many times they are total strangers, if you will, to me. And it took me a while to get over the idea that I'm going to go knock on someone's door where I've never been before and they've never met me. So I've learned over the last couple of years to make a phone call. As novel as that sounds, in the world of texting and emailing, maybe phone calls are not as regular. I try to make that first contact a phone call, and I'm surprised, quite frankly, and I shouldn't be, that people are genuinely welcoming of a phone call. They want to hear the voice. I hear theirs. We establish a dialogue, and then Jesus takes it from there, and it's wonderful, so that when I do arrive, it's scheduled, and it makes it very easy to then start and practice the ministry.
Excellent. Can you describe a typical visit to the homebound, to this individual? What is like a typical visit experience?
I will tell you first that there is no such thing as a typical one, in the sense that they don't all run the same. But
Sure.
The things that I do experience more often than not is that the people generally are alone, or there may be one other person, a care provider, a child, an adult child that might be there to help facilitate the communion. And so I know that it's going to be very much one-on-one with maybe an escort or someone else there to assist. when I'm driving, wherever I'm driving in the St. Matthew's Parish area, for the most part, right, because this is a parish-based ministry, and
Sure.
and so my service is to the parish, and the people who call are generally members of the parish, or maybe they're located in the area. But when I drive from church to their homes or wherever they are, I will play some soft Christian music in my car. I'll turn on my nifty battery-operated votive candles, which I bought on Amazon. They're really a neat little thing to have. And I know I have the picks with me. And I just prepare and really try to embrace the idea that He is here with me. And then again, the sage advice from Father Abel was, remember, you are carrying Jesus into this place. And that is always something that I remember as I approach the threshold of wherever I'm going, whether it's a nursing home or retirement center or someone's residence, that I am carrying Jesus into this place. And that seems to solve a lot of the anxieties and the issues and the concerns, because it's love, present, real.
That's so powerful right there. You are carrying Jesus into this place. You're carrying Jesus to others, right? Those words from Father Abel, that brings a lot of peace. Like you mentioned, once you have that in your mindset that you're bringing Jesus with you, Jesus is bringing the peace.
I've learned that there's no time limit on these encounters and these experiences. I am retired. Praise be to God. My wife and I both have been able to retire. And so there is nothing else that I have to do when I set up these appointments. And I want to spend the time with the people as much as I need to and as much as the situation might dictate. There might be dialogue ahead of time. There might be dialogue afterwards. It doesn't really flow exactly any one way, but I leave it open to the communicant to invite that if that is something that they wish to talk about. So we do that. I do follow the rite as contained in the Holy Communion and worship of the Eucharist outside Mass, but I take my time. We may sing. I've had communicants ask to sing a song. We may not, but I'm very deliberate and patient and taking my time in the rite, because it's not necessarily a substitute for Mass. It can't be, but it should have that same level of reverence, right? And so I'm not there to see how many times I can distribute Jesus within a day. This is this person's moment, and many times it's the only moment they may have for the entire week or so, depending on how frequently we're able to get together. So, but that is, if you will, the typical part of it. And I will always ask them if there is something I can do for them outside of their home. What is it if they need, if anything? And they will sometimes ask for prayer. Sometimes I've had people ask me to take them to confession or to have a priest come, but I've learned I can take them to the church. So those are some of the things that I typically experience.
Very much contrary to our world, this is not a quantity over quality. This is a quality, and that's where it ends. Yeah, it's quantity, and it's quality time is what it is, which is beautiful. You're bringing Jesus here, and it's time that they want, time that they need, time that they deserve as a child of God to have that time with Jesus and participate in the sacrament.
Very dear friend, again, I'll name Julie Alexander from the Alexander House, shared the story that she sometimes might have measured success by the number of bodies or the number of people that attended something. And her father very sagely and wisely said to her, Julie, Jesus said, feed my sheep, don't count my sheep. And so my count is one. When I serve that one person, that's the count. And that's as far as it goes. I did look to see, because I create contacts in my phone of the people I've administered to, and it's quite a few. Quite a few is all I'll say that I've been out for the last couple of years. And thanks be to God, we have that. But I don't count, and I don't try to achieve a certain number, by goodness. It's that one who is the most important.
Yes, indeed it is. So what activities or rituals do you usually perform, once you're there with the communicant?
So Ideally, and I'll be a little bit of a throwback this way, when I go to someone's home and I'm there, I've got myself a little name tag that says I'm an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion at Batis, St. Matthew Catholic Church. I try to wear a coat and tie. I try to be my best when I distribute communion to them because, again, this is their service. This is their time to experience that. And I'll bring a purificator with me just in case. I bring my little votive candle, and I'll find a spot in the house or the place where I am with them that is prominent between me and the communicant in the area where we are, so that it becomes the focus of where we are. And sometimes it may take shuffling some things at a coffee table or a little kitchenette or wherever it might be. But nonetheless, when it's set up and we're set up and ready to go, it's clear that Jesus is the center of attention for this particular time, right? And so once we get to that point, and then it becomes redundant coming back to those people over and over, that part is very efficient. And then we pause. We pause and ask for silence. And silence is what? The great time for Christ and for God to really spend the time, and the Holy Spirit to spend the time getting our attention and getting us attuned to what we are about to embark upon. And so during that period of silence, that's it. We have silence. We start with the sign of the cross, and then we continue with the rite. It itself is not that long. It's a reading. There's a couple of prayers. We say the Our Father. We distribute communion. Again, I am very deliberate in taking a good amount of time after communion is distributed, and while the communicant has consumed the host, to allow them to pray there in that time as well. Then we do the closing prayer, and the service ends. In and of itself, it's all of maybe 10 minutes, but my encounters with the communicants can be anywhere from 20 to 30 minutes at the least.
I'm happy that you're bringing up prayer, because that's going into my next question very, very easily there. So kudos to you for helping connect that dot for me there. So this question here is, what role does prayer play in serving the homebound? You've spoken to that some, right? But both in your personal preparation and also with those that you visit. In my personal preparation, it sharpens my awareness. It sharpens my attention, if you will, and focus on the awesomeness of the gift of the Eucharist. I hate to say it, but sometimes being able to get to Mass as frequently as my wife and I do, we try to get there daily. There are times, even if it's not daily, that I find myself falling into a redundant practice and not necessarily embracing all the awesomeness of the Mass. Guilty. It happens. And so when I schedule these encounters with communicants in the home, I purposely try to space them out enough so that this is the time for him and for him to encounter this person and vice versa. And then I just soak up all the grace that comes from that, from that exchange. So again, it's not a matter where I'm trying to get out there and mass distribute, my goodness, no pun intended, but to make that encounter very personal, prayerful, and even inviting prayer from the communicant if they have any intentions or prayer needs that they have, to let them know that it's more than just, here's Holy Communion, I gotta go. With that prayerful preparation that you take there, it's really, even for you, it's a call to go outside your comfort zone. You know, the communicant is already, seeking, so they've probably already gone through their own process of, okay, well, I'm going to let someone into my home, right? This is someone is coming from the church. I'm seeking, and they're bringing what I'm seeking. You, as someone coming in, going outside that comfort zone, it's a space for you to grow.
No doubt.
Can you speak a little bit about that? I noticed you mentioned that in your talking points there.
The more we practice, right, whatever it is, golf, Mass, prayer, distributing Holy Communion, the more efficient, hopefully, the better we come, the sharper we come, the better we use the gift that we've been given and raise it up to a new level. And trust, surrender, believe, receive, right? We've heard this. It is a trust on my part. And I will say I grew up practicing law as a profession for many, many years, and lawyers are not always the most trusting or trust worthy individuals. At least that's the image and reputation that we might have. And so trusting is a step sometimes. And you get out of the boat, so to speak, to use a Pilgrim Center of Hope analogy. You would get out of the boat, we step out into the deep. I've never, ever been disappointed or caught off guard. Somehow the Holy Spirit provides the words that come out of this mouth when in need, and then I walk out thinking, Ed, you should have known better. You know that God will not forsake you, that this encounter will be fruitful, and they always are.
It's that grace that comes with this, right? It's that encounter is fruitful. It's the grace that comes with it, and wanting to go beyond your comfort zone. And we'll actually talk more about this topic in the first part of our second segment there. So this was a good little introduction to that there. So I'm curious, Ed, how do you ensure that the homebound individuals that you visit, the communicants, how do they feel connected to the larger church community? I understand this, can be a challenge at times, right?
It can be, and that's a great question. That's a great question because we're there for a couple of different things, right? Of course, they're to distribute the Eucharist in this service under the rite that's provided by the church. That's number one. Mm-hmm. That's very obvious. But sometimes it's in the little things that help keep us connected, right? Why do we go to church where we go? Because the person that we first encountered had a smile on their face and made me feel welcome, right? That's what brings us into that church building, is that ignition, that spark from something that might otherwise be innocuous, and even the person providing it maybe doesn't even realize how significant it is, right? So now, what do I do when I get to their home? Well, we let them know that we're there on behalf of St. Matthew's, which is many times 5, 10, 15 minutes away, right? And that the church is available and that I'm there as their Uber driver, if you will, to get them to and from if they need to. Ergo, I've taken people in so that they can get to confession, right? Sure. But create the appearance and expose the reality that we do outreach so that we can touch them and that they can have a way and their path into the church, physically, but also communally, right? So we do that. When I go into their homes, I will take them the most recent bulletin, and I will grab a bunch of those on Sunday, half a dozen or so, depending on how many I need for the week, and walk into their home or where they are and hand them a bulletin. And boy, the first time you do that, people are surprised, and then they come to expect it and look forward to it, right? Because they don't get it. A lot of these people, quite frankly, don't read online. You can't say go to the website and download the PDF. That's not too ecumenical. And so I'll take a bulletin with me. When Today's Catholic is out, we have the opportunity to get those at St. Matthew's. I take a Today's Catholic to them. And I always tell them that all this is available to them free of charge without a collection. And that's what we do. We try to make it available so that they can see the presence of the church beyond the curb, if you will.
You're bringing the larger church community to them directly. Those are great, small, but great ways, and they make such a big impact. They may not be aware that Today's Catholic is even available to them. The bulletin may be, but it's one of those where it's out of sight, so it's out of mind. So walking in their door and handing them the bulletin, that's that connection. Maybe there's a ministry that offers some type of virtual participation. If they're not used to, scanning a QR code or downloading a document, there's an opportunity to help them learn even, which, as we're talking about this, I can see me going that route where saying, hey, I can show you how to do this. It really doesn't take that much time, and it helps that connection so that way they do feel connected to that parish community.
I will tell you, I walked into one home. I was meeting, I knew an elderly woman who was homebound and incapacitated physically, and I walk in, and there is an iPad propped up in a little iPad holder, and she's watching Mass from her church, which is outside of the San Antonio Diocese. She was here visiting family, got sick, took a turn, and therefore she wanted homebound communion, and her family made that happen for her. But she still wanted to watch Mass, and she's up in her 80s. It was wonderful, right?
Yes.
And so I've even taken to the point of having a little card prepared and showing people, if they can absorb it and they understand technology, here's how you live stream. Here's where you can go to live stream. And you go to, masstimes.org if you want to see where churches are and when the Masses are, and just become a little bit of an informational, depending again on what they can absorb and what they're looking for.
Beautiful, beautiful. I want to touch on one point you made just a moment ago where, that smile. Someone, you walked into a parish and you saw that smile. Honestly, this is a story that my wife tells, that almost exactly word for word from what you just shared. We moved to San Antonio about 13 years ago now, and we simply Googled Catholic Church and our zip code. And the parish we attend now was the first search results. So we moved in on a Saturday. On Sunday morning, we went to Mass, and that's what we encountered. We encountered one of the hospitality ministers. When we walked in the door, we had a smile, a handshake, a welcome, a greeting. Come on in. We're happy you're here. Mm-hmm. That greeting, that feeling of joyous Christian encounter is what's like, oh, we feel home now. That greeting, that's what did it, if you will, right? Yeah. So it's that same smile that I'd imagine you bring in to the homes of the communicants as well.
It's the little things that make the difference, right?
Yes.
Make people feel welcome. It's phenomenal how many times people have said, I remember you did this, and I'll be honest with you, at 65, I may or may not even remember ever doing that.
Yeah.
But they do,
right?
And God forbid, I don't want to give them a negative appearance or negative impact in any way, especially, my goodness, when I'm carrying him in this pyx, right? I mean, just think about that. So patience, take my time, enjoy the encounter, enrich them in their experience with the encounter while they consume communion. Beautiful.
Beautiful indeed. Well, that right there is a good spot to take a break there, Ed. So we're going to take a short break. I'm Jason Nunez, here with Mr. Ed Batis, a dedicated member of the ministry to the Homebound, who is sharing his experience with this important and beautiful ministry. In our second segment, we will talk more with Ed and hear about how his involvement in this ministry has impacted his journey of faith. So stay with us on Journeys of Hope through the break. We will be right back.
You're on the everyday journey of life, and sometimes it's tough to keep hope alive. Well, that's why Pilgrim Center of Hope is here for you. Not only does Pilgrim Center of Hope provide you programs like Journeys of Hope, but did you know you can also find other helpful media productions from Pilgrim Center of Hope on our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org. Every first Friday, take an audio retreat with Jesus called Meet the Master. Every third Thursday, have a social with the saints. And our new series, Who is the Man of the Shroud, meets at the intersection of faith, true crime, science and medicine, history, art, and much more. Find it all at pilgrimcenterofhope.org or on your favorite podcast app. And keep hope alive in your daily journey. Pilgrim Center of Hope, guiding people to Christ.
This is Angela Cialana.
And I'm Jason Nunez.
We are two of the hosts of Journeys of Hope, the weekly radio broadcast and podcast program that brings you inspiring stories of faith, hope, and love from around the world. We have an important message today to share with you.
As we approach the 5th year of this program, because of you, we have been able to reach tens of thousands of people through podcasts and over the airwaves.
When we say that Pilgrim Center of Hope's programming is supported by God's grace and by you, we truly mean it. We're grateful for everyone who has supported us to make our mission possible since 1993. This effort of support and the need for support is ongoing. Presently, Pilgrim Center of Hope is seeking monthly supporters who want to help us continue our mission of guiding people to encounter Christ.
You can also make a difference by sponsoring a week of Journeys of Hope for only $50. You can dedicate a week of the program to a special person or organization of your choice.
This can be a spiritual gift, in honor or in memory of someone who has touched your life.
Your dedication will not only honor your loved one, but also join us in our mission of evangelization and spreading the good news of Jesus Christ to thousands of listeners.
Please consider becoming a monthly supporter of Pilgrim Center of Hope or dedicated Journeys of Hope program today. You can do so by visiting pilgrimcenterofhope.org and click How to Help. There you'll find a donation form. Or if you'd like to dedicate a Journeys of Hope program, you can do so on our wish list.
Feel free to call us at 210-521-3377 to discuss how you can partner with Pilgrim Center of Hope to continue guiding people to Christ. Thank you for your generosity, and as we say at Pilgrim Center of Hope, every little bit helps. May God bless you. Welcome back to Journeys of Hope. I'm Jason Nunez, Media Production Coordinator for Pilgrim Center of Hope. Today, I'm joined by Mr. Ed Batis, a dedicated member of the ministry to the Homebound. Ed, once again, thank you for being so generous with your time.
Well, thank you very much for having me. And again, it's not my time, it's his. And in the time we've had so far, I've received more than I feel like I've given. So thank you.
In that first segment, we spoke and touched on going outside your comfort zone. And I want to begin this second part of the conversation by kind of talking more about that. And that can be viewed as the other side of the special ministry, right? So what challenges do you face in your service to the Homebound? And how do you overcome them, if it's that going past your comfort zone or if it's maybe something else that we haven't discussed yet?
There are two parts to it, right? There are the Ed Batis, human, me barriers, right? I expect, I feel like it should go this or that way, and I need to really let go and let God, as the saying is, right? And so in any ministry, right, that we get involved in, there's a tendency, again, I'm speaking of myself and my own journey, to try to own it, right, and to try to control it. And I really have to cleanse myself of that and know that this is his time. This is his time to encounter and be with this person. So all those human things, you know, like speeding on the highway because I want to try to get there, or wherever it might be, the things that release, relax, and understand who's in the car with you. That's really part of it for me. I've been addicted to schedules for a long, long time. It's hard to sometimes manage this, and I'll let people know I'm 5 minutes away, I'm 10 minutes away, but try to manage that a little bit. That's the first part of it from a practical perspective, right? Letting that go. The other challenge is Satan. I mean, I think about, and people sometimes don't know how to react or don't maybe want to mention that word, but he exists. I know he does. Yes. I feel his temptation way more than I maybe understood earlier in my life. But having that there and trying to be my best and raising Christ up above and beyond so that Satan gets behind me and he stays behind me and I put him back there, that's a challenge. And so whether it's walking in the house and seeing whatever you see in people's homes, right? They're opening up their home and trying to get beyond the material, trying to get beyond those atmospheres and those things that man tells us have to be done a certain way, and encounter you think about, and I don't mean to ramble on, but all the times that Christ encountered people, think about the environments in which he did so. It ran the gamut. Mm-hmm. Everywhere, right? On the side of the road, at the well, you name. And so I need to really, again, understand that this is the time of encounter, period. And that's how I kind of get over the challenges. I really understand that, that's the way. He is the way to overcome those. And still, as I said earlier, I've never been disappointed.
It really sounds like being intentional is the way to overcome those challenges. and a saying and a phrase, if you will, that's grown in my heart. And listeners may have heard this before. I know, the fine folks here at Pilgrim Center of Hope have heard me say this, but to be Catholic is to be intentional.
Being a living example and an embodiment of who we believe Jesus Christ was and is, right? And so that, again, some of the practical things and the challenges, again, you're a stranger to them. Sometimes I'll invite people to FaceTime. If they know and they want to see a face, I can, we'll walk through a FaceTime introduction. So again, they're familiar. Because, again, understand they're opening their door. They're answering a doorbell to someone who they've never met, right?
Right.
And
right.
so the challenge of familiarity and building rapport. But I will tell you that goes away, and that is gone in the first minute or two of our personal encounter at the threshold of the door. And it may be just my good looks. I don't know.
Well, unfortunately, this is an audio program. So if this was a video program, that would have come shining through 100% there, Ed.
You're very kind. Thank you.
Yes, indeed. So how do you balance the spiritual needs of the homebound with their physical and emotional needs, which is something that may come up in conversation? You mentioned you may be the one person they see each week, right?
Sure. And the physical, I'll say physical needs sometimes are evident, right?
Sure.
You discuss things with people, whether it's a walker or a wheelchair, whether it's a cane, whether there are other things that reduce their mobility. Almost a non-issue, to be honest with you. You learn after a while that that's not important. I've distributed communion to people in their bed, in their strata-lounger, at the coffee table, at the kitchen table, on the patio. Wherever they're comfortable, we can get over the physical limitations or the physical needs, if you will. Emotionally, I like to get to communion as sooner in my encounter than later. I like to have the service first and then spend some time visiting afterwards. I find that having communion distributed and consumed and having the service completed, then we visit. It makes it a little bit more fruitful, right? Instead of going into having Jesus wait, if you will, while we're talking and visiting, that's maybe not the way that we would do it. We go into church, I think about it, we go into Mass, get prepared for Mass. We do less socializing on the way in than we do on the way out, right?
Sure.
So it's kind of like that. But again, the communion service solves sometimes a lot of that, and it opens people up, and they share with you. But I will always ask, is there anything I can do to help you between now and the next time we get together? Are there any prayers or petitions that you would like to state and that I can take with me as well? So that covers much of what might be considered an emotional need. And then those other things that tie them to the parish, I think, help, again, create a tie where people aren't alone or lonely, so to speak.
Can you share a story of a particularly impactful visit or interaction that you've had in your service of ministry to the homebound?
I'm going to share two very quick ones, and I couldn't eliminate one or the other.
Sure.
I had the distinct pleasure of meeting a young woman. She was 101 month when she finally passed away after having distributed communion to her for almost a year. One of the most wonderfully energetic 99-year-old people I've ever met, and I only know of a couple to begin with, but I say that somewhat, comically, but also at the same time, she was a living example of hunger for Jesus Christ. She knew me by name. When I showed up, she said, "Thank you. I've been looking forward to seeing you and Jesus. Thank you for bringing Jesus to me." Her daughter, who is near my age, in the 60s, we would have such wonderful time where the group home is where she was living. The other residents, there were other residents there that one spoke German, and I learned how to say "peace be with you" in German, and kind of interacted with others there. The staff, some Catholics, some not, some Christians, some not, but nonetheless, we would say the Our Father together and invite anybody. And it became just a really communal encounter. She passed away earlier this year, and it's one of the few rosaries and visitations I went to. The things that she did over her life and her faith. She told me about facing towards the homes of her children in San Antonio. So if her son lived to the west side, she faced west and said prayers facing to his home.
Wow.
I mean, just things that were so powerful. Beautiful, beautiful woman. May she rest in peace. The other encounter is really more recently, when I have my book, and you see the book here, it's a smaller book. It's not like the Roman Missal that we use at Mass. It's a little smaller than that. But a grandson of the communicant was there with his mother, and for some reason I engaged him to hold the book for me. And so he became my server, holding the book, as altar servers do, if you will, for the priest. And lo and behold, it became an addiction. I mean, when I get over to see him once a week, grandson Manuel's there, and he is just ready to hold that book. And so if there's anybody there, and I've done it with adults as well, I invite them, if they're interested, to be more involved by holding the book for me. And that was kind of a cool thing. So I always look forward to seeing them. Two anecdotal stories, but joy.
Joy indeed, and that's a great way, because that's an aspect maybe that some may not consider as for those that are also there present with the person that you're there to visit, right? And if they're there and they're present, if you give them a role, especially if they're a kiddo, right? Give them a role, have them hold the book. It's almost like a young family in Mass. Sit in the front so the kiddos can see what's happening, right? It hopefully keeps them interested in what's going on. So that's a great way to approach those type of situations.
It is so much an opportunity to evangelize. I don't know how many times you've approached another adult and said, "Are you Roman Catholic, and are you prepared to receive communion?" But when you're in this environment, visiting maybe an elder and adult children are there, I'll ask those adult children, "Are you Roman Catholic? Are you prepared to receive communion?" And every once in a while, I'll see my intended communicant kind of snicker like, "Boy, thank you so much for asking," right? Because it can come from some stranger sometimes, right? The evangelization is received differently when it comes from a stranger than maybe your mom and dad, so to speak. And so I am bold that way to invite people to consider. And they'll say, "Yes, I am Catholic, but I'm not prepared." I said, "Well, if you'd like to receive, go to the confession, receive reconciliation, we can set that up." And oh boy, sometimes you get a great response, sometimes maybe not. But at least you throw it out there as an invitation to allow them an opportunity to encounter beyond just the communicant.
And it, in a hopeful way, plants a seed even, right? If it's not well received initially, maybe it does plant a seed to where later on it's a thought that revisits them and they can, ponder it some more, if you will.
You never know.
If someone who's listening to this program right now is homebound and is seeking a deeper connection, what would you advise them to do?
Well, canonically, if you will, according to the guidance of the Church, our service as Eucharistic extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion, or we call it Eucharistic ministers, but as an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion, we are commissioned and appointed by the pastor of our parish, and we serve at his direction, right? And so technically, my right to distribute communion is to the parish and the boundaries of the parish and the people of the parish. So if you are practicing Catholic, and you maybe are in an area where you're not home, you're visiting family, and now you've taken ill, or you're homebound, whatever, make a call to the Catholic Church, maybe closest to where you are, would be what I would recommend, and just say, "I'm Catholic, I'm in the area, I'm living here, I'm there, I'm staying here or there, and I'd like to receive communion." And if the parish has that mechanism in place to get extraordinary ministers of Holy Communion to become homebound ministers, and they're there and they can do it, fine. If not, I'd almost say call me, and we'll figure out how to make that happen, okay? But again, out of respect, I have gone to my pastor, to go to the other pastors in neighboring parishes, just so that, again, we respect the protocol of it. But that would be the first thing, to go there. And then secondly, go to a family member, maybe, or an acquaintance that I've had a call from a lady across the street from the communicant, and that's how we got to know that she wanted to receive. But then on the same side of it, I would say that if you are interested in this ministry, not necessarily being a minister, but helping advocate communion to the homebound, keep your eyes and ears open. And it may be upon us as members of the community, if we see a neighbor who we know is Catholic, are you receiving communion? Would you like to? Did you know you can? Boy, there you go. And that's the greatest way to evangelize as well. So if someone's listening, do those things and consider those things to help expand the ministry to those in need.
On the flip side of that question, what advice would you give to someone who is considering joining this special ministry to the homebound, or even for those who are listening and are curious, what qualities are important in someone who serves the homebound?
I'll go back to when I was installed in January of 1983 as an extraordinary minister. I was asked by my priest to do it up. At that time, we were still living in Illinois, but I was asked by my priest to do it because he needed the help. And so I served him, and that's how I kind of got involved in it. But I will tell you this, and you may have seen it in my notes, from the time I was first installed in January of 1983 to the time I became an extraordinary minister of Holy Communion to the homebound in November of 22, 14,568 days passed between the time that I was instituted as a Eucharistic minister from my parish to the time I first went into someone's home. And I have to say I'm embarrassed that that time passed. What I would say to someone, don't wait 14,568 days to answer. He is knocking. I knew he was knocking. I just didn't hear him. And I just didn't listen, maybe. That's what it was. But he is calling us to take him to others. Physically, yes. Theologically, of course. But if you feel the call and you hear the call, don't wait, number one. Number two, pray. I spent some time in the chapel trying to figure out, okay, how do I do this? How do I soften the edges of a litigation lawyer that has been somewhat jaded over the years? And how do I do it? I trust. I surrender to Jesus. I try to speak and learn how to talk in a way that he would be happy with me as the vessel through which he is encountering these other people. Understand, third, I guess I would say, understand that it's not you who is the connection. It's Christ. I have to surrender my ego. Ego's a bad thing, right? Bad, dangerous thing. I have to surrender my ego, surrender my control to him. Be flexible, be open. And when I'm those two things, when I'm flexible and I'm open, the grace just comes pouring in, as opposed to me setting and my blinders on saying, I got to do it this way because Ed says so. And last, each of us is made individually perfect by Christ and by God from conception on. Be yourself. You are uniquely special in the way that God made you. Be that person first. Grow, indeed. Stretch, yes. Step out, of course. But be that person first, because somebody out there will be able to connect with you by being who you are. Let Jesus shine through naturally, as opposed to trying to put on some kind of a show. Relax, be yourself, but know that he is in charge, and go from there.
You spoke about ego a moment ago, and gosh, that's a common aspect that we all encounter. And, prison company included, ego and pride. And what helps me in those times that I realize, which is always a crucial step, to realize that that's what has entered the sphere that you're in, is the words of John 3:30. He must increase, I must decrease. And when I can call those words to mind, it really helps bring me back, if you will, and that's kind of in anything in life. In this particular ministry, you're right. You mentioned in the first segment there, Satan is real. Yeah. You know, when you're bringing Jesus, you are bringing Jesus to those who cannot physically go and participate. So Satan's going to be looking. So he must increase, I must decrease. It helps. It helps in those kind of scenarios, I feel, because it brings the attention back to Jesus, back to the truth, back to the light, so that way we can then be that light to that person also.
You know, there are people that I have encountered that hadn't been practicing regularly and meeting their Sunday obligations in church. Now all of a sudden they've experienced a physical or health calamity, right? And those things affect us in different ways. And the last thing I would add on to what I would suggest is be prepared to encourage the communicant to rise up, yes. Right? To rise up and get to Mass, whether it's electronically on the live stream or, you know, praise be to God, a bus or a ride or an Uber by Ed, whatever it is that gets you back into that church building, right? Because that's his home and we're there and he's inviting us in and we should go, right? And be there. Sometimes it takes a little bit of encouragement, you know, to get someone. And then if they are alone, nobody really wants to walk into a brand new place that they've not been for a long, long time alone. They need a wingman. They need somebody to help escort them, maybe physically, but also maybe spiritually. So be ready to provide that beyond simply carrying Jesus and distributing communion and then leaving them.
Before we begin to wrap up our segment here, two things I just quickly want to mention. You mentioned there in your notes that you provided, and really what this is a beautiful reflection that you wrote where you mentioned the over 14,000 days. What I wrote toward the end of this reflection was the power of being present. And if I had a way to somehow kind of give a brief kind of one sentence in an effort to help someone understand what the ministry to the homebound is, aside from bringing Jesus to someone who is home and cannot attend Mass, it is that as well, the power of being present. There's a lot behind simply just being there and encountering that person. You know that song, Here I Am, Lord, Is It I, Lord? Yes. I have heard you calling in the night. Well, I admit that I didn't hear him, or I wasn't listening that he was calling. And so I need to practice to get perfect. And I want to be perfect like Christ, like God made me. I know he did. And so it takes practice. And so invite people, give them hope, but ignite within them the hope that you know is there. It's innate. It's just a matter of getting it ignited again to the point of challenging them to step outside of where they're comfortable, right, for the purpose of the journey. I'm going to give you a moment here to actually share with our listeners that we do have a special person with us in the midst of our recording today. Well, thank you. As Providence has it, I have an appointment this afternoon in a little bit of time to go to the home of a cancer battler, I'll call it. She's working towards beating it, but it's a long journey. And so at 6 a.m. Mass this morning, I had my picks, my pouch, and went up and received the Eucharist in my picks and have had it with me. Again, the discipline is to have it, keep it on you until it's distributed, so I have that. And so here today, as we sit here, I ask all the viewers, all of you out there, to imagine I have a purificator from the church. I have that just for obvious purposes when I'm there. But I lay the purificator out. I have a nifty little battery-operated votive light candle that flickers and beautifully thing. Buy them on Amazon. Get a box of 12 for about $8. And my picks with Jesus Christ. And so as we've sat here this time, he has been right here among us, literally is physically present with us here. It's beautiful. It's an incredible gift, gift. The real presence of Jesus Christ, nothing beats it, nothing. Nothing beats it is right, Ed. Beautiful. It's been a special blessing, Ed, to spend this time with you and, dive into this beautiful ministry that you are a humble servant of. So thank you for sharing your insights with us. Thank you for sharing your experiences with us. And we, of course, have a call to action for anyone listening. If you are curious and interested in either having someone come to visit you or participate in this beautiful ministry, start by contacting your parish and simply inquiring if that's the case there. So thank you once again, and we are going to begin to wrap up our time together by giving you all a jewel for the journey. Now, as is, of course, our tradition, we do want to give you a spiritual gem that you can think about, ponder, and reflect on throughout the week. So this week, we will reflect on the words of Saint Teresa of Calcutta, and it is, quote, "Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love," end quote. And I want to give credit to Ed here, because when we were, planning this episode and deciding when to meet, I asked him, I was like, hey, do you have a quote from a saint here that you lean on or that comes to mind when you think about this ministry? And that was it. And it's so appropriate, these beautiful words from Saint Teresa.
Well, thank you. And to Saint Mother Teresa, praise be to God, by her example and the things that she said. And, she had a pretty good handle on sound bites that got the point across, as we know. And the irony and the beauty and the mystery of all this is that, are we doing great things? I feel like this ministry does one of the greatest things outside of Mass. It makes Jesus available for us to commune with him and to receive him in Holy Communion. So is that a great thing that we are doing? No. In reality, we're doing something simple by simply carrying him. He is that great thing. So it's a small thing to us, for me, to pick up and do this, to make the greatest gift available. And I do it with great love. And it really is appetizing, but it also stirs within me a greater love and a desire to be closer to him. So he is the great thing. We carry it, and we do the small things by carrying him with love. So there it is.
Doing small things with great love. Wow. Beautiful. Saint Teresa of Calcutta, pray for us.
Indeed.
And let us begin to bring our journey to a close by giving honor and praise to God. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and ever shall be, a world without end. Amen. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Fellow pilgrims, we invite you to come visit Pilgrim Center of Hope and learn more about our threefold ministry of events, media outreach, and pilgrimage journeys. We are a nonprofit ministry. Join us in this vital evangelization as we guide people to Christ and the Church. You can learn more about Pilgrim Center of Hope by going to our website, pilgrimcenterofhope.org, or by calling us at 210-521-3377. Let's strive to live each day with love, faith, courage, and hope. Until next time, may God bless you.